The moment I knew Deborah was going to self-destruct, she was standing barefoot on the conference table, screaming at a spreadsheet like it had insulted her lineage. It was 9:12 a.m., Tuesday, Q4 strategy meeting. The CEO was on Zoom, frozen mid-blink like a terrified owl. Everyone else just stared silently because no one knew whether to intervene or hit record. But me, I sat calmly, watched her unravel. And I knew. It finally hit the wall I quietly built for her, brick by clueless brick. Now, rewind 3 weeks. The day she told me in front of the entire team, honestly, I don't even know why Rachel's job is full-time. My cat could automate those reports if I gave her a laptop. Laughter, nervous chuckles from interns. My stomach twisted, but my face didn't flinch. I just nodded once like a hitman confirming the mark. She didn't know. God, didn't know how much I wanted her to say that out loud. Because there are 3 things you don't do to someone like me. You don't insult my intelligence. You don't touch my workflow. And you don't give me a reason to make you prove yourself. Deborah had done all 3, but here's the catch: revenge wasn't instant. No one gets publicly humiliated over one insult. That's what amateurs do. What I planned was slower, precise, surgical. When I smiled that day and told her sweet dreams, it wasn't passive-aggressive fluff. It was the trigger. She never bothered to learn how our automated reporting system worked. Thought clicking a Slack shortcut was the same as writing the logic that fed it. I spent years turning chaos into digestible KPIs, while she spent years climbing the ladder with linked-in quotes and color-coded mantras. She bragged once, loudly, how she had never touched a line of code in her life. She said it like a badge of honor, so I took it personally. One night, I stayed late, not unusual for me, but this time no music, no takeout, no comfort. I pulled up the back-end logic of the weekly dashboards and stripped out all the recovery protocols. Left just enough of a skeleton that, on the surface, things looked fine. But when the time came to fetch new data, dead air, no alerts, no fail-safes, no errors, just silence, like a polite ghost standing behind you, waiting to be noticed. And then I waited. I didn't skip a beat, came in early, sent my usual Monday digest ready, email from the shared account before the dashboard populated, scheduled it in advance. Deborah wouldn't check. She never did. She'd skim the charts during meetings and toss in phrases like synergy or pipeline pressure, while we all nodded politely, and pretended the data came from her brain, not mine. Monday, she opened the meeting with her usual peppy strut and faux visionary drivel. Clicked the projector. Expected the familiar slides. Instead, 404 data source unavailable. Silence. I didn't look at her. Just sipped my coffee and jotted fake notes in a pad. Meanwhile, panic set in like floodwater behind her eyes. I watched her click again and again. Open tabs, minimize, maximize, whimper, blame Wi-Fi, blame the server, blame the intern who wasn't even in the room. But I wasn't ready to finish her yet. That morning was just the beginning, because Deborah was about to learn what it feels like to manage a machine you never understood, one forgotten semicolon at a time. By noon, she was pacing in heels that hadn't touched carpet since pre-COVID, slamming her venti iced coffee into her standing desk like it owed her child support. Her team's status said in a call. Lie. It was in panic mode, pinging IT, pinging me, pinging some poor analyst named Troy who only joined the company last Thursday and still thought Synergize meant something. She had no clue that the system she broke wasn't broken, it was sleeping. Deborah didn't know about the 3 invisible switches I'd installed last year when she demanded we automate more, but without spending anything. I built them in over a weekend. Quiet toggles, hidden triggers, like rigging a smart house to catch on fire if someone clapped twice. The first switch, disable redundancy backups. The second, mute failover alerts. The third, manual override. One button, my button. And here's the funny part, she triggered them herself. A week ago, she changed the file path from our shared Google Drive to her personal Deborah Vision 2024 folder because she said my naming conventions lacked sparkle. That folder never synced, which meant the Monday dashboard didn't fail. It never had the data to begin with. The brilliance of it, no one could prove sabotage. No one would even look for it because it wasn't sabotage. It was a boss overriding her team and then publicly flailing when her vision turned out to be a black hole in a pink blazer. By 2 p.m., she'd called a spontaneous all-hands. Deborah never called meetings without slides. This time, no slides, just a Sharpie-stained whiteboard, sweat blooming through her silk blouse like regret. So, she said, breathy, obviously we've had a small hiccup in the reporting system. The room said nothing. She tried again. And while Rachel usually handles these reports, I think it's important that we all learn to be cross-functional. That was my cue. I leaned forward casually. Do you want me to walk you through the back-end logic now? I asked, sweet as battery acid. Should we wait until you get IT access to your Deborah Vision folder? You could hear a pen click 3 chairs away. Her eyes flicked to mine like she wanted to lunge across the room, but she smiled instead. Plastic, hollow, no need, I've got it under control. Liar. Control was a currency and she'd overdrafted, but the fun part was still coming. Because corporate theater doesn't collapse all at once. It dies in slow scenes, each one uglier than the last. Day was just the cold open. The next day, her calendar invite landed in everyone's inbox. Deborah's automation masterclass, 9 o'clock a.m. sharp. I nearly choked on my yogurt. Because she was actually going to try. She was going to stand in front of 20 professionals and pretend to know what she'd mocked me for mastering. And I already knew what I'd do. I wasn't going to sabotage her slides or hack the Wi-Fi. Too obvious. Too sloppy. I was going to do nothing. Let her teach the class she had no business running. Let her step into a ring with a beast she thought was tame. Because the truth is, when you've spent years building a system brick by brick, line by line, and someone waltzes in claiming it's just pushing buttons, you don't destroy them. You let them log in. The room was too quiet for 9 a.m. meeting. That kind of silence that clings to your skin, with secondhand embarrassment before the first words even spoken. Deborah stood near the screen, grinning like a politician on a sugar crash. She wore a blazer with gold buttons and a blouse that screamed power move, but her eyes were twitching at the corners. Like she hadn't slept. Like maybe she'd spent the night Googling what is SQL. She cleared her throat. Thanks everyone for coming. Today we're going to demystify automation together. It's not scary, not magic. She turned to the screen and clicked her first slide, just logic. Slide 1, a word art title that said Deborah Vision, rebooting reporting. No one reacted, not even Troy, who always clapped at presentations like it was his side hustle. She kept going. Slide 2, a screenshot of our dashboard homepage. Nothing wrong until she clicked a hyperlink labeled real-time data pull and it popped a 403 error. She blinked. Clicked again. Same error, her voice cracked slightly. Okay, just a little firewall thing, we'll pivot. I felt the grin creeping up my face but bit it back. She fumbled through more screenshots, talking about logic layers and time-based triggers like she was reading from a fortune cookie in a foreign language. Every time she tried to explain something, she'd glance at me. Subtle, nervous, like I might pounce. But I didn't. I just watched and waited. Came the moment I knew she'd fall through her own trapdoor. She pointed at a flowchart, one she'd apparently designed, and said, "This is where the monthly data syncs with our lead pipeline. All you do is hit refresh here and boom, boom." She clicked the refresh button and boom, literally. A dialog box opened, warning error, permissions required. User access denied. Someone coughed in the back. It sounded suspiciously like a laugh. Her hand froze on the mouse. That's weird. She looked at me. Rachel, you've been doing this longer. Any idea why it's not working? I tilted my head calm. Well, since the data pull sits behind the locked-in point we set last spring, you'd need superuser access. Remember, we restricted that because someone accidentally pulled confidential data into the marketing folder. Legal almost had a stroke. She blinked like a deer on a highway. Oh, right, that. Someone else asked, do you have superuser access now? Opened her mouth, then closed it, then turned back to the screen and mumbled, we'll circle back. I wish I could say she pivoted gracefully, that she acknowledged the learning curve. But no, Deborah doubled down, started rambling about macro theory and dashboard empowerment. I stopped taking notes and just started counting lies. I hit 8 before the intern beside me whispered, is this satire? And then came the final cherry. The last slide. Deborah's live demo. Announced it like it was the Super Bowl halftime show. Okay, everyone, time to actually run a live automation. We'll use last week's sales data. Everyone ready? I glanced toward her monitor and nearly choked on my coffee. She was using the test environment, the one I built to train junior analysts, the one filled with dummy data and embedded Easter eggs to keep it light, like customer names including Buzz Aldrin and Opera Tacos. I waited, ran the report, and the screen lit up with multicolored bar graphs and a bold heading that read, "Congrats, you broke nothing yet." She didn't notice. She turned, beaming, "See, it's that easy." But the room wasn't smiling, because they saw the fine print under the header, warning, "This environment does not contain real data. For practice only. Mistakes made here do not affect actual reporting. But good luck explaining that to your boss." Deborah froze. Finally saw it. Hand hovered over the keyboard like it might bite her. Silence again, this time heavier. She turned toward me with that same hollow smile, eyes pleading. "Rachel, maybe you can jump in and explain some of the deeper back-end stuff." I didn't move. I just said, "You said you could do it in your sleep. Thought you were wide awake." And then I watched the blush spread across her chest, crawl up her neck, and land squarely on her cheeks. That was the moment the room turned. Not against me, against her. The next morning, her office door stayed shut. Not locked, just shut, like a tomb, like she'd crawled inside to marinate in whatever blend of shame and spreadsheet anxiety she'd brewed overnight. The only sound was the occasional buzz from her cell vibrating on the desk beside me. 3 missed calls from Chief Innovation Officer, 1 from HR, 1 from someone simply labeled JAY flexed biceps. I didn't ask. Meanwhile, rest of the office moved differently. Emails were suddenly more polite. Slack threads quieter when I typed. The junior staff who used to brush past me like I was just part of the scenery, now they were offering me coffee. Even Troy looked up from his desk and mouthed, "You good?" I was better than good. Because while Deborah retreated into a fortress of faux spreadsheets and passive-aggressive emails, I was already 10 moves ahead. The key wasn't in destroying her, it was in replacing her. Quietly, logically. Like slipping a new queen onto the chessboard while the old one was too busy live-streaming her own downfall. So I started small. Took over a client call she missed, chickened out of. Cleaned up her botched expense reports that got flagged for excessive candle purchases during a tech conference. Then I rewrote a project brief she submitted that still had insert strategy here in the middle of paragraph 3. No one asked. No one questioned it, they just let me. But here's the twist, I wasn't climbing. I was inviting her to fall, and fall she did. 2 days after the masterclass, I caught her in the kitchenette, stabbing a tea bag into lukewarm water like it owed her child's support. Her eyeliner was smudged, and her heels were replaced by flats, Deborah, like watching a peacock molt in real time. She didn't see me at first, just muttered to herself, to get control back. Need to own the room, they still respect me, right? Then she looked up and flinched. "Rachel," she said, forcing a smile. "Big week, huh?" I nodded, "Seems like it." She stirred her tea with the speed of a nervous raccoon. "You know, I've been thinking. Maybe we could co-lead the ops strategy moving forward, combine our strengths." I tilted my head. "Your strength being," she chuckled, brittle, "vision, leadership." Let the silence stretch until even the microwave stopped humming. Then I said, "I think the team prefers functioning systems over scented candles and slogans." She dropped the spoon. It clanged like a confession. That night, I pulled a final string. Remember Deborah Vision 2024, her infamous Google Drive folder full of half-baked planning docs and pastel motivational quotes. I requested edit access weeks ago. She never noticed, probably thought I was just organizing her mess, which I was. But I also added a new file, titled Quarterly Review Draft Private Notes. It looked like a memo to the CEO, innocuous, clean, but the final paragraph. I remained deeply concerned about Deborah's technical comprehension and judgment. As more reporting errors surface, I fear the team's trust in her leadership continues to erode. Recommendation: consider transition planning before Q2 to maintain operational stability. I left it open. Didn't send it, didn't even highlight the line. Just let her find it, which she did. At 8:17 a.m. the next morning, she burst into the office, face blotchy, eyes wide. "Did you write this?" she hissed, shoving her phone screen into my face. I didn't even blink. "I write lots of things," I said. "Want me to automate that too?" She stood there, mouth open like a fish in corporate drag. And that was the day she stopped calling me sweetie. The next week was a masterclass in quiet warfare. Deborah didn't go nuclear. She went passive, slippery, like mayo left out on a summer picnic, still smiling, still talking, but slowly poisoning everyone in the room. She stopped inviting me to leadership syncs, switched to messaging me only in vague, open-ended just checking in, pings that somehow still reeked of accusation. Even tried to revive an ancient collaboration initiative no one had touched since 2019, assigning me meaningless tasks like reviewing archived customer churn models that had been disproven by her 3 quarters ago. It was desperate. It was loud without being loud. And I let her do it, because I already had my eyes on the email thread that mattered. Subject: performance review cycle draft evaluations due EOW. Buried in that chain was a sentence that sealed her fate. Please include specific examples of leadership, problem-solving, and cross-functional contributions. Perfect, because I had receipts. Literal receipts. The custom script I'd coded to replace our failing pipeline hadn't just fixed the issue, it had logged every interaction tied to it. Who accessed what? Who tried to change what? Thought they were fixing something by uploading a mismatched CSV file at 11:42 p.m. and then blamed the tool the next morning in front of the team. I attached those logs to my self-evaluation. No commentary, just evidence, screenshots, timestamps. the script's own sarcasm baked into the comments. / Deborah attempted to reroute input logic via Deborah Vision Test 2, result, chaos. But that wasn't the kill shot. Kill shot came in a one-on-one I didn't schedule. Friday, 4:30 p.m. I was getting ready to leave when the CEO popped into my doorway, holding a printout of one of my reports. He looked tired but amused, like someone who'd finally found the last piece of a puzzle he didn't know was missing. "Got a second?" he asked. "Of course," I said, and meant it. He sat, crossed his legs, held up the paper. "True that this entire forecasting suite was rebuilt by you." "Alone?" I nodded. He set the paper down. And the old version, the one Deborah's been referencing in Weekly Strategy, was missing critical filters for churn attribution. "Yes." He nodded again, slowly. Then asked, "Did she know?" That's when I looked him square in the eye and said, with zero malice, "She didn't ask." That was it. He exhaled like someone had been holding his lungs hostage. "Going to be restructuring a bit. Might shuffle responsibilities at the director level. Just FYI." Translation, she was done. I said nothing. Just smiled, soft and clean. Not victorious, just inevitable. But I wasn't done. That night, I did something I hadn't done in months. I ordered takeout from the Thai place Deborah once mocked for being too spicy for executives, cracked open a beer, and wrote her an email. Subject, Notes from Automation Training Body. "Hi Deborah, thanks again for the opportunity to co-lead the automation workshop last week. I've taken the liberty of compiling a glossary of key terms you may find useful moving forward." Attached. Best, Rachel, the glossary was real. 53 terms, from regression logic to silent failure. The last entry, leadership now in the art of understanding what you don't know and not insulting the people who do. Never replied. But the next Monday, her office was empty. 1/2 HR didn't send an announcement. No with mixed emotions farewell memo. No awkward sheet cake in the break room. Just silence, like the kind you hear in a theater right before the lights dim and the curtain lifts. Deborah's glass office sat there untouched, half a lipstick-stained coffee mug, a crooked vision board still pinned behind her desk that said "Slay goals. Slay problems. Slay the day." Didn't even bother recycling it. People tiptoed around it at first, like the ghost of her ego might rise from the ergonomic chair and slap them with a non-disclosure. But slowly, the energy shifted. Conversations flowed, jokes returned. The intern stopped whispering, and even Troy stopped sweating. Me, I was just waiting for the next domino, because Deborah might have vacated her throne, but her fingerprints were all over the mess she left behind. Quarterly board review was approaching. Fast. She had promised data transparency and operational excellence, and hadn't delivered either. Worse, she'd fudged a bunch of client SLA timelines to pad Q2 numbers. The kind of fudge that starts as marshmallow fluff and ends in a SEC audit if someone trips the wrong wire. And guess who inherited the presentation? Not officially, of course, but as the person who understood the dashboards best, was asked to support the interim lead. A guy named Rob who'd once confused a pie chart for donut chart and called it deliciously actionable. So I did what I always did. I built it clean, bulletproof, untouchable. But this time, I embedded something extra. Slide 14. Buried deep in the appendix. Title, Legacy Discrepancies and Historical Adjustments. At first glance, it was just a clean graph showing corrected SLA metrics for the past 3 quarters. Hover over one specific bar, Q2, and a tooltip popped up. Note, original data sourced from Deborah Vision folders. Manual overrides observed. No audit trail. I left it in plain sight. No accusations, no fireworks, just facts. The board meeting came. I stood in the corner not presenting, just observing. Rob droned on. He was bland, which worked in his favor. Then came the appendix. Slide 14. A VP squinted. "Hold on, is this about manual overrides?" Rob paused, sweated, then turned to me like a dog hearing its name mid-scolding. I stepped forward, calm. During our cleanup, we discovered some irregularities in how SLA delivery windows were reported. It appears some manual edits were made without documentation. We've since corrected the process and implemented safeguards. Another board member leaned forward. "Who made those edits?" Rob glanced at me. I said nothing. Tooltip said enough. No one said her name. They didn't need to. After the meeting, our CFO approached me quietly. "We'll need a full audit of all her prior projects," he said. Discreet, but thorough. "Can you lead that?" I nodded. Already started, and I had. Because the one thing Deborah never considered, never respected, was the way data remembers. The way systems log fingerprints even when you try to wipe the screen. And just like that, wasn't just the woman she underestimated. I was the ghost in her machine, and I wasn't done haunting her yet. The deeper I dug, the louder her silence became. Inside Deborah Vision 2024, beneath layers of pastel PDFs and Canvid mantras, I found something she never meant anyone to see: an old export labeled Client Adjustments Internal Only. The spreadsheet looked harmless until I ran a diff scan against our invoicing database. 32 mismatches. Some were minor. A few were decimal errors, but five were flat-out fraudulent. Clients billed for services they never received. Custom reports marked as delivered with no attachments. SLAs shortened by 2 weeks just to hit a performance bonus. And the kicker, her name on every edit. She hadn't just faked competence, she'd falsified value. Quietly, I documented everything. I screen-captured file history logs, time-stamped each version. I copied the folder structure, zipped it, encrypted it, and sent it to myself from an anonymous Proton mail, just in case someone decided my audit was too aggressive. But I didn't go nuclear. Not yet. First, I scheduled a cross-functional sync with legal and finance. Called it a data continuity review. Showed up with a printout of the report in a plain black folder. No dramatic labels, no highlighter. Just numbers. Just truth. I let the head of compliance read it silently while I walked through the cleaned-up dashboard flow. She stopped on the 5th page. Wait, this contradicts Deborah's Q1 reporting. I nodded. That's why I flagged it. Another silence. Then, did she do this alone? That's when I said the most important line of my career. I don't know, but she signed it. They didn't ask more. They didn't need to. The wheels turned fast after that. Whispers. Meetings behind closed doors. Morning, legal's door was shut for 4 hours. When it opened, our general counsel looked like he'd aged a decade. By Thursday, IT issued a system-wide credentials purge for routine security compliance. But we all knew what that meant. Her admin access was gone. The audit trail was being sealed. And somewhere in the distance, I imagined Deborah, wherever she'd landed, yoga retreat, wine-soaked denial cave, or some overpriced consulting gig, feeling the tremor. But I wasn't finished. Because the clients she'd shortchanged, they deserved to know, and I had a plan. The next week, I volunteered to lead a client relationship rebuilding initiative, pitched it as proactive brand trust work. The board loved it, greenlit it immediately. I called each client personally, not with an apology, but with a gift. Hi, this is Rachel from your analytics team. Reviewed last quarter's engagement metrics and discovered your reports were missing some critical variables. We've rebuilt the logic to give you cleaner, real-time forecasting, and as a thank you, we're offering a complimentary queue and a walkthrough to help your team get the most out of it. Not one client declined. Not one even asked why the old reports were flawed, because that's the difference between exposure and evolution. Deborah faked performance. I engineered it. As my calendar filled with back-to-back client calls and post-meeting praise from VPs who suddenly knew my name, I realized she wasn't just gone. She'd been overwritten. But the final keystroke hadn't landed yet. That would come with one last file, one she thought she'd buried forever. It was named Final Vision Deck Final 2, PPTX. I found it in a forgotten folder deep in her OneDrive trash, buried under layers of junk drafts and duplicated thumbnails of herself, photoshopped into Keynote stock images. The file metadata showed it was created 2 months before she stood on that conference table, swearing she was the future of operations. I opened it expecting another hollow manifesto. What I found instead was gold. It was a pitch deck, not for our company, for competitor, logo swapped out, language tweaked. But 90% of the data, graphs, automation architecture, ours, mine, my work stripped of attribution, repackaged under the banner of Deborah Vision, a scalable ops framework for high-growth firms. And the final slide, target role, VP strategy availability Q3 2024. Timestamped. Branded. Sent from her company email. She'd been shopping our secrets while standing in front of our CEO, pretending to be the heartbeat of innovation. Now I had her actual heart in a zip file. But I didn't blast it. Didn't run to HR or CC the board. Instead, I attached it to a blank email. To her. Subject, sleep well, that was it. I sent it on a Friday night. No signature. No threats, just the facts. Just her words returned like bad karma in a neatly labeled attachment. She replied within 10 minutes. No greeting, no denial. Just, what do you want? I didn't answer, because I already had it. Her silence, that was victory. Her disappearance, that was acknowledgement. Her legacy, reduced to a folder I could delete at any time. By Monday, word was spreading in careful tones. We're restructuring, elevating proven performers, recognizing operational excellence. And just like that, the company stopped calling our systems Deborah's dashboards. They called them Rachel's engine. I didn't hang new plaques, didn't redecorate her office. I left it empty. Because some ghosts deserve a room to echo in. Now, when interns ask how I got promoted, I smile and say, hard work. But the truth? She said she could do my job in her sleep, so I let her sleep. And when she woke up, her kingdom was gone.